Every month, supporters on Patreon or Subscribestar at the $5 level get to ask me anything they want. So if you'd like to ask me anything you want in the month of December, just sign up on either website at least the $5 level. Starting on Subscribestar, Pierre asks, "Hey Shane, what is your response to the rhetoric socialists push that the certain things we use, such as the internet, GPS, Wi-Fi, and almost every component of the iPhone, originated from publicly funded areas of society, such as the military or universities?" Funny how they didn't come from those institutions as the internet, GPS, or anything else. And while it is true that some of the technologies that went into them originated from those places, there are a couple of things to keep in mind. These places take a huge amount of resources from the economy. So of course there are going to be some things you can point to as coming from there. I'll bet many of these people are atheists, or at least skeptical of religion, so a good counter would be to ask why so many innovations have happened, at least in part, because of religious institutions. But the main point is, remember your Bastiat. They're looking at the seen, not at the unseen. Can they really show that these things would not exist if it weren't for these institutions? As you pointed out in your second comment, they can't, and they certainly can't show that these things wouldn't have been better if the private markets had had the full resources and freedom to innovate. The money and resources that went into those inventions was going to be spent on something. If it wasn't going to result in the internet, GPS, or whatever, it would only have been used for something even better. Because unlike government, private companies have the incentive to make things that people consider to be beneficial. Because otherwise, how are they going to get people to give up their money to pay for it? They can't just collect money by force the way government does. So I'll just let Pierre have the last word on this question. That's what upsets me about this argument. Government, the entity we have conflated and equated with general society, created GPS. It has benefited society. Therefore, we as a small group of ideologues have the absolute right to infringe upon your property rights, impose policies that perverse incentives in the market and raises prices, lower your standard of living, confiscate your property, and kill you if you resist or even attempt to escape. Talk about escalation. Over on Patreon, Pipsqueak asks, "What are some of the most insane, overblown, and/or impossible promises you've ever heard politicians make?" Oh my God, how do I choose? Look at Barack Obama's entire campaign, or any of the Democrats right now. The only reason Republicans are any better is because they pretend to be libertarians on the campaign trail. They pretend to want to cut government even though they grow it about as much as the Democrats do. Most famously, you had George H.W. Bush saying, "Read my lips, no new taxes." Well, that promise didn't last, did it? But there have been some really crazy ones. John Edwards promised he'd cure Alzheimer's, and Joe Biden did the same with cancer. There's Trump's wall, of course, especially the part about having Mexico pay for it, and his trade war as well. Newt Gingrich promised a lunar colony. And then there's the mathematically impossible ones like UBI or Medicare for All. Really, Vermin Supreme promising free ponies for everyone isn't even in the running. Josh Havens asks, "What is the most heated argument you've ever been in about politics? What was it about? Who won the argument? And would you have handled it differently looking back?" It's an interesting question, but I don't approach things that way in the real world. If something starts being heated, I generally just walk away because I know I'm just wasting my time with that person. It's different online or any other place where there's an audience to convince, but even then it's not about winning the argument. It's about planting seeds in people's minds. Most of them have never even heard someone truly be skeptical about whether or not government can solve any of our problems. You're not going to convince them right then and there. But you don't have to. Just give them a little nudge in the right direction. Chris, and yes, that's Chris Hangartner, asks, "What's your response to people who say that the 1990s economic collapse in Russia was caused by bull markets and shock culture?" I'm not really sure I've heard anyone claim that. I've checked some websites that have been notoriously statist about economics, and I didn't see any of them making that claim, not even Mother Jones. I'd ask them for more details about why they think that before I pick them all apart one by one, because of course we know why the Russian economy collapsed. In fact, the only reason anyone even thought the economy of the USSR was any good to begin with was that they had been lying about the economic stats, which shouldn't have been all that surprising considering that they lied about everything else. So if Yeltsin wasn't even really starting with solid economic foundations to begin with, what more is there to explain? And finally, Thomas Urbanski was being sneaky and actually slipped this one in on December 2nd while I was recovering after a power outage, but I'll answer it anyway. In hypothetical ancapistan, how could we judge and act on trade of stolen property, assuming that at some point the buyer doesn't have a reason to assume he's buying stolen goods? Yeah, clearly in that situation the buyer hasn't done anything wrong, so the cause of action should be against the thief to cover the cost of replacing the item. I think the only time the buyer should be involved is if it's something like an heirloom or something else of sentimental value, or a one-of-a-kind item that cannot be replaced, in which case the thief should be made to compensate the buyer not only for the cost of the item, but some extra for the trouble he's caused him. And that's it for another month. Thanks for watching, and please support this channel by clicking like, subscribe, and share. And by the way, I don't collect any information from any of my viewers, let alone those under 13. I don't even have a way of doing so, but I do have a cartoon avatar, so after the first of the year, the FTC might decide I'm in violation of COPPA. Which means I'll need your support, but no matter what, I'll still be around because you can also watch my videos directly at bittubers.com, which is always monetized and never censored. I've even been uploading some of them a few hours early to encourage people. And either way, this channel is definitely going to need your support in the future, and the best way to do that is to go to donate.bogosity.tv, where you can donate with PayPal or crypto, become a regular subscriber at Patreon or Subscribestar, or download BitTube's airtime extension and have that extension active when you watch my videos. Thanks again, and until next time, stay strong and be free.